Okay, Broncos country, what a wild day today. 2 days after the Broncos lose just a heartbreaking game, 10-7, fail to advance to the Super Bowl. We see Sean Payton, George Payton, really the Greg Penner, Walton Penner ownership group making some substantial changes. I mean, yeah, and I wouldn't count this as dysfunctional changes or anything like that. This is very interesting, and I'm optimistic about what's happening, I think. So y'all be sure join the chat. Be sure to like and subscribe. We're on our way to 5,000, 4,000 subscribers. Shout out to Kalshi. We'll get into Las Vegas Raiders head coaching position odds, but use the code DTB. You guys know how it is. Link is in the description for a $10 bonus when you deposit 10. Got the Super Bowl coming up. But let's go ahead and get into it. Joe Lombardi was fired today, and this comes as a pretty shocking surprise, right? Very rarely does Sean Payton fire his friends, and the timing of this is pretty interesting. I guess they're kind of having all their exit meetings today. The Broncos were, and yesterday, all the players being interviewed and stuff. So, yeah. Anyways, I think this is in conjunction, and Mike Kliss has had some tweets about this. Saying, "Hey, it's hard not to consider that possibly Joe Lombardi is being fired." To make room for a substantial promotion for Davis Webb, and maybe one in which he's going to have a little bit more control on the offense than myself, I would have ever anticipated. My whole thought with Sean Payton being here is as long as he's here, he's going to call plays. But today was a super busy day, but I had some time to listen to some of the guys on altitude, like D-Mac, Chad Brown, a few of the other guys kind of talk about the situation. Those guys are like really plugged in, right? So whatever they're saying, you definitely have to take into consideration kind of what they're insinuating. And I think that they've brought up some good points. Overall, I mean, the team is in such a fantastic position right now, but we even saw this last game. Jared Stidham frustrated by the late play calls, sometimes getting in and out of the huddle late. That's been an issue here for 3 years now, and you've seen it with Russell Wilson, Bo Nix, and Jarrett Stidham. Sean Payton's kind of been the common denominator there. And, Sean Payton's still 62, still sharp, but Chad Brown brought this up. Like, he's not as quick with it he was 10 years ago, right? That's understandable. You're in your 60s now. But man, when the pressure's on and you got to spit that play call out, maybe you're needing somebody who's just going to do it a little bit quicker, who's just a little bit quick with it. Davis Webb's like, what, 31 years old? And this might be something happening that I never really saw where, hey, Sean Payton maybe has had conversations with ownership or George Payton just about leaning on the offensive staff a little bit more and maybe taking a little bit more of an approach of like what Bill Parcells was at, later in his career, right? A more kind of CEO type of head coach role. And maybe that would help kind of take a little bit of the stress off, with him at his age and relying a little bit more on this. Now, I have thought, hey, everybody's wanting Sean Payton to give up play calling duties. Well, not everybody, but some people in the chat over the years. I still have thought that that's been a ridiculous kind of statement because, yes, there has been some issues, right? But, overall, I have liked where this offense is going. But I think that there are very fair points that, the operation has been inconsistent. The run game. You can talk about the misutilization of big time mismatch weapons that we have. Evan Ingram, I don't think was utilized to his greatest ability here when you spent money on him. Let's talk about Marvin Mims, man. Imagine if this guy was featured in the offense a little bit more. And maybe there needs to be a fresh perspective on the run game. And this is something that Sean Payton, George Payton talked about, in their end of season pressers. And maybe Joe Lombardi's kind of the fall guy for that. But with Davis Webb, I mean, his ascension has been, astronomical. And maybe George Payton or not Greg Penner rather was like, man, I'm not going to let this guy go. You're seeing what Mike McDonald is doing in Seattle. You don't think Baltimore would have rather kept him instead of John Harbaugh? Now, I'm not saying Sean Payton's going to become washed like John Harbaugh, but this isn't Sean McVay we have at head coach. I think Andy NFL in my Discords brought up a great point that yeah, if this firing of Joe Lombardi is done to where it promotes Davis Webb, I think it's almost Sean Payton's kind of signaling like, man, this guy's going to be the heir apparent to me, man. This is the guy I give my blessing to, right? He's going to be the coach in waiting, however long that is. And Josh McDaniels, I believe, was the coach in waiting for quite a while in New England. But Belichick, man, he just kept doing his thing, and then he eventually left for Vegas. But we can afford to have super high paid coordinators that are making head coach money. Of course, with the richest owners in the NFL, and maybe this is the right time, right? To see what Sean Payton collaborating a little bit more with somebody like Davis Webb, what that could do for the offense. We've only seen him call plays in preseason. There's no guarantee that he's a better play caller than Sean Payton, but maybe now is the time to for Sean to trust this staff a little bit more and see what Davis Webb can do. So I'm hoping he's retained. I've wanted him to get his shot to call plays. I never thought it would be with the Broncos, but Joe Lombardi being fired was not something I was expecting. And I don't think you do that unless it's a move to retain Davis Webb because you don't want him to go to the Raiders, right? One of the hosts on the Altitude show I was listening to, I forgot his name. He was saying that a Las Vegas radio station booked him for a segment tomorrow because they believe he's going to be hired. Davis Webb was going to be hired tomorrow as the Las Vegas Raiders head coach. To me, this seems like keep away. Why would you want an ascending coach to be poached by a division rival? We're not going to allow that. So, yeah, we'll have to see. I think, again, when coaches get older, you do need to kind of rely on your staff a little bit more. And again, maybe this has been a pattern for 3 years where the operation has just been too clunky. The substitutions have not been, they've been happening too late. And the Penners really want to see this offense just operate more consistently. And maybe that is melding the mind of Sean Payton, who has all these wonderful play designs in a West Coast philosophy, meld that with an up and coming, hopefully play caller and offensive mind in Davis Webb, and that could be something very, very powerful. So, man, I think that this is fun, and I don't want to hear any more things about Sean Payton's ego if something like this happens. Like, yes, Sean Payton has an ego. He's confident. He can be a little braggadocious. That's what you want in a head coach, right? A guy who operates with conviction and swagger and instills confidence into his guys, right? But I think some people take Sean Payton's ego too far of like, man, this guy, it's always his way or the highway and, all these different things, man. If he elevates Davis Webb and does this, I mean, I think can't help but say it's in the best interest of the organization, right? And I do think, I mean, Sean's going to be 63 in next season. It hasn't really been something that I've thought about, of him just being at that age where, he might be slowing down a tad, not a ton, but just a tad. And having an offensive play caller that you really trust, that you can collaborate with game plans with, to where you can have input on some very big situational play calls. But again, you got a guy, Davis Webb, there that can kind of help share the load, bear the burden for you a little bit. I like this. Now, the Broncos also moved on from wide receivers coach Kerry Colbert. I thought we saw a better performance out of the wide receivers this year, but again, 2 years straight with just drops like crazy. It was time to move on. I'm excited to see what we can do at that position. And then we also let go of our cornerback coach, which I was a little bit surprised because our secondary has been fantastic, but Addison Lynch is out of there. So again, Joe Lombardi has worked with Sean Payton for 15 years. You're not letting him go unless this is a move to bring in or to bring up Davis Webb. So I find it very, very interesting. Um, I guess with that being said, I'll get to some of y'all's comments here, but any more final thoughts on this? I think it's exciting. I really hope he's retained. If he goes to Vegas, Davis Webb, that is, I'm not really sure what all this is for because Lombardi seems to be more of a game plan guy. Maybe you could fault him for why the run game coordination has been horrible. I don't know, but we need to see the run game get with it. Overall, I think it's perfectly fair if you're the owner, if you're the GM, or even if you're Sean Payton, man, to realize the operation and the inconsistencies of the offense. I mean, the volatility of this offense was insane. You'd have quarters where we would look inoperable as an offense, and then you'd have quarters where we look unstoppable as an offense. And again, if Davis Webb can get a little bit more say, maybe we could see guys like Marvin Mims and Evan Ingram integrated into the offense a little bit more to where their strengths are highlighted, to where they're actually utilized. Like, I don't think Evan Ingram's washed. I just don't. Maybe I'm in the minority there. I think we drastically underutilized what he could have brought to this offense because we had him in the slot like 43% of the time. That's it. So I'll get to some of y'all's comments, but very, very interesting stuff, man. Respect Mike Hose, what's going on, man? Thanks again for the shout out on X. He says, Sean Payton firing the wide receiver coach after saying we didn't have a talent issue scares me. Feel like we aren't going to upgrade the room. Yeah, maybe. To me, I kind of saw that as like, and again, I don't think we have like an elite group, respect my coach, but I think we have a room that you can definitely win with if, right, everybody's healthy. But we saw Pat Bryant, man, not finish games. We saw, Troy Franklin deal with injury, and all this. And again, I think it's not, to me, there's something going on, man, when you're not catching the ball. When we're one of the highest teams in the NFL in drops. I don't think that's a talent issue. I think that something needs to be changed with the coaching to hopefully get these guys to focus on a new level, because it hasn't just been an issue with one guy on the team. Just collectively, our wide receivers have just dropped passes, everybody. And when it's a theme with all the players, to me, that's going off in my mind that there's probably something that can be done coaching wise to help alleviate this. So I hearing George Payton speak, though, I think that to me, he's never going to say flat out like this is the position that we're going after. But I think to me, I felt like he understands that the weapon group still needs to be better. And particularly in the run game as well. We need real running backs. The only running back I want to see return from this room is RJ Harvey. And J.K. Dobbins, right? Because, he was out. But J.K. Dobbins on a cheap deal, but you need to bring in like another 2 legitimate backs, in my opinion. Great comment. Kodiak, next wide receiver moves, trading our 2027 second for Braxton Berrios. Our 30 overall pick for Christian Kirk. Nah, man, that's not going to happen. I think, was it you, Kodiak, or Markey that brought up Alec Pierce? That's interesting. I don't know, man. I know that I've loved our non-ego wide receiver room, but man, I do like George Pickens, man. I do like George Pickens. Maybe now's the time. Now Bo's going into his 3rd year, and he's proven that he's a top 10 quarterback, franchise quarterback, all that. Maybe now you can bring in a guy that's a little bit more of a personality at that wide receiver position, man. Going to be interesting. And SoCal Johnson, draft Kenyon Sadiq, please. This would be fantastic. A lot can change, but it actually seems like Kenyon Sadiq, what I'm seeing right now, won't be like a top 15 pick. He might be there in the 20s. Heck, he might even be there at pick 30. He will be in range. Broncos have 9 picks. It would be interesting. I would prefer for us, honestly, though, to go uh, offensive line or defensive line with our first round pick. I know that's not a sexy thing, but I think you can sign some weapons at running back and wide receiver, tight end. Well, like K. Dotton, you know. But apparently, we'll get into the draft stuff here on David Talks Broncos. But it seems like early indications that this is a good year to need tight ends and wide receivers. So fantastic. Let's see. Imagine Davis Webb goes to the podium and says Kroll and Troutman will be featured heavily in this offense, man. No, man, we know, man, that's a fever dream. We should have won. I know, man. And it seems like Sean Payton, man, he was upset with his play call. And I didn't agree with the decision, but I can understand the decision to go for it on 4th and 1. You go up 14-0 in that game, we're playing in the Super Bowl, man. It was just the wrong play call. And Jarrett Stidham, shot put it a fumble. That was just insane. Big E Bronco, how's everybody doing tonight? And I hope Davis Webb gets promoted to OC and takes over play calling. Yes. Now, again, I don't think it's a sure thing that Davis Webb is going to be a better play caller than Sean Payton, but I think it's worth the risk to try. That's how I'm feeling today. If this guy is so hot, and I didn't expect his name to be so hot in head coaching interviews right now in this cycle. Hey, let's see what he can do. See what else we got. Jackson, Sean fired Kerry Colbert, which, by the way, was one of his former players in New Orleans, if I remember. Or did he play for the Saints? I know he played for the Panthers. Maybe I'm making that up. Sean fired the receivers coach because the players weren't using sound fundamentals to catch the ball. Jake Plummer was bringing this up repeatedly on his podcast, and I absolutely agree. And that's why you're seeing drops. Davis Webb will fix the offense. He's been around elite coaches since his playing days when he was at Texas Tech. Davis Webb was at Texas Tech? I thought he was at Cal. Was he at Texas Tech then Cal? I can't remember. Actually, now that I think about it, yeah, he was at Texas Tech. Texas Tech, man. Why am I blanking on his name? Come on now. The legendary coach. Rest in peace. More Desmond Watson. Yes, please. And, while we're talking about coaches, let's, first off, here is just the PR thing that the Broncos put out. But it seems like now, ever since the Joe Lombardi firing, dude, tanking. Well, I guess this was like yesterday. Davis Webb was like the favorite. And then it's flipped again to Clint Kubiak. Davis Webb's now at 8% over on Kalshi. So, man, with our Broncos, man, not winning the Super Bowl, my portfolio is looking a little light right now. I'm gonna have to deposit some more money in here, and we'll see about Vance Joseph, man. I'm kind of surprised, but also Altitude Sports brought up a very interesting thing too today, and how they thought that Sean is such an intense guy that actually Davis Webb and Vance Joseph's temperament, it's very important to help even things out in the locker room, in the organization. So I could see Greg Penner prioritizing that as well. You kind of need a mixture of both. That's also why the Chiefs, I think it's a good move that they brought back Eric Bieniemy, because everybody else was just a little too nice. Everybody on that staff, Andy Reid, all this stuff, they needed a guy that can play the bad cop to Andy Reid's good cop. It's almost like switched with the Broncos with Sean Payton, man. He's an intense guy. He'll throw you in the doghouse. You almost need some of the coordinators and coaches to kind of help balance that out. That's why it was a good move for the for the Chiefs to bring back the enemy, man. He's an intense dude. He's an intense dude. He will hold people accountable. Some people don't like him because of that, right? He was the successor to Mahomes. Man, I don't even remember that. Mike Leach. I remember now. Davis Webb is no Sean Payton. Won't happen. Broncos fans eager to go back to mediocrity. Again, Flacco, I think that if he is promoted to play caller, I'm taking more of the optimistic approach that I think that this would be, I think regardless on what his role is as OC, I think it's going to be a more collaborative approach between him and Sean Payton. And I think it could be like a really good thing. At some point, Davis Webb has to have his opportunity to call plays. We'll see what happens. But you're right. It is no guarantee that he would be a better play caller than Sean Payton. By no means. There is some risk involved. But I also don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to suck either, But I think working with Sean Payton, collaboration, that's the key word, collaboration, I think that's very beneficial. I think it's very beneficial. The Broncos in the first part of 2024 had some of the worst wide receiver play I can remember. Yes, they've gotten better as a unit, but still too many gaffes. I completely agree. Cliff Kingsbury was the head coach at Texas Tech. Oh, yeah, that's right. Mahomes QB1 and Davis Webb was quarterback 2. Very, very interesting. That is right. I totally forgot about that. But yeah, we'll see if some more information comes out later tonight or tomorrow. But I like the fact that the Broncos have made some moves with their staff. Again, kind of puzzled on the one with corner, I thought we've had fantastic cornerback play, aside from the Riley Moss penalties, I guess. And we'll see what happens with Jahdae Barron this year. Riley Moss, does one of those guys get moved to safety? I think we need Jahdae Barron on the field more next year. And honestly, I think that Jahdae Barron's a better tackler than Riley Moss. And so maybe Jahdae Barron would be better at safety than Riley Moss, right? Because I know some people talk about moving Riley Moss out to safety. I don't know. But I also want to bring Brandon Jones back. I want this defense stacked next year. We got the cap space to keep it stacked. But I don't like the idea of drafting safety, I think, within the first 4 rounds this next year because of the secondary players that we got. Maybe Michael Taff, because, a Texas Longhorn. Sean Payton loves Longhorns. I love Longhorns too. Texas players, good football players. But I think with the guys that we got, and we're seeing Devin Key get better, right? I don't think that there's a need to prioritize that position when you could move a guy. I don't know, man. I know this is a bit of a diversion, but we can't have Jahdae Barron just playing a part-time role next year. That's how I see it. So, but yeah, this is something interesting to watch. I mean, with all of these coaches that coach late into their lives, and not like Sean Payton's going to die, soon, right? But you know what I'm saying? Late into their, ages for their career. There's always the passing of a torch, so to speak, if they are play callers, they stop calling plays, right? And they start leaning on their staff more. I have not foreseen this to happen with Sean Payton, in this moment. But if it does happen in this moment, I'm fine with that. We'll see how it goes. I don't see him giving that up unless it's to somebody that he truly trusts and believes in, right? I think that's also a factor in this as well. It's not like we're going to go out and hire, I don't know, whoever that, Todd Haley or something like that. No. So I like it, guys. I like it. I still think Sean Payton's going to be here for quite a while. But if we're able to, keep Davis Webb with Sean Payton for a while, and then when Sean Payton rides up into the sunset after a Super Bowl, Davis Webb is the coach in waiting. I mean, then we're talking about Dynasty, baby. I really like that. So, David, thoughts on BYU tight end Bansta? Dude, I don't know. Honestly, I don't even remember him playing CU right now, but I'm sure I'll love him. I haven't done any draft prep yet, so we'll get there. Sean Payton doesn't get credit for his coaching tree. What are you talking about? I mean, people talk about all the time how Dan Campbell's a Sean Payton guy, right? I think Sean Payton has a fantastic coaching tree. Father Time is undefeated. Yes. Yeah, Barron was cross-trained at Texas to play safety. He did play more like nickel corner than like free safety, right? But he has played some. But that wasn't a move that you were going to make this offseason or this in season. It was going to be made this offseason. But I think like one of the biggest priorities for the Broncos this offseason is to actually have like a real plan for him, because Jaquan McMillan elevated his game to a new level. Will probably put McMillan on like a second round tender, I would imagine, which would pay him around $5-6 million, I think, this year, which I think he's absolutely worth that and more. So your secondary is kind of going to be set again. What do? You can save, what is it, 8-9 million moving on from Brandon Jones. But then again, Sean Payton he's done this in the past, moved on from Justin Simmons. But Brandon Jones was playing better than Justin Simmons, I thought, man. We'll have to see. Man, I don't know if Flacco, I feel like every time I watch like the Lions on primetime football, they're always talking about how he's a Sean Payton guy. But nonetheless, Flacco, you're smart enough to know who cares what the media talks about, man. You know ball. And Brandon's saying this is the only way to retain Davis Webb. I would assume so, right? And again, you're not firing Joe Lombardi unless you're going to keep Davis Webb, right? Now, if we fire Joe Lombardi and lose Davis Webb, that'll be a little bit of a head scratcher. Yeah. I mean, he's worked for Sean Payton for 15 years, but maybe you just need some new energy in the room, right? A new perspective. Maybe Davis Webb should have a little bit higher of a seat at the table, right? We got the richest owners in football. We can figure this out. But eventually, Sean Payton's going to have to lean on his staff a little bit more offensively as he ages. Is this time coming a little bit sooner than maybe I anticipated? Maybe, but maybe when you truly have a hot shot, legitimate, like rising star on your staff, this is the time to invest in that if you're Sean Payton, right? Maybe this guy is going to be, the prodigy, right? Mike Shanahan, probably his best coach to come out of his coaching tree that he directly kind of worked with would be Sean McVay, right? And Sean McVay called plays for 3 years in Washington. Now, was some of that under... No, I think that was all under Shanahan, right? Or was that under Jay Gruden? I don't think it was under Jay Gruden because Jay Gruden was calling plays, right? So, yeah. Sean McVay had to get play calling experience under a guy like Mike Shanahan. So, having a guy like Davis Webb under Sean Payton for a few years, that sounds like a very nice recipe to me. And Sean McVay is probably my favorite coach in the NFL. So if you can kind of like replicate that a little bit, you can sell me on this. But don't get me wrong. Success is not guaranteed. But what is life without some risk? Also, I'll do a video on this later, but the Broncos said today that the surgeon said that this was some like something wrong with Bo Nix's ankle to where this broken ankle was going to happen eventually with how it was constructed. What? So I guess we got that out of the way. And yeah, it's looking like Jim Leonard's going to go to the Bills. So it is what it is. But Carlos, I would like to think this. I don't think that Bo is making decisions for the team. I do think they understand that there is a good chemistry, I think, with Bo and Davis Webb and Sean Payton. And the way the altitude guys were describing it is like for Bo and Sean to be at their best, they need a guy like Davis Webb in that room. So, yeah, but I don't think, in all respect to Bo Nix, right? All respect to Bo Nix. There's maybe only a few quarterbacks in the entire NFL that I would want having legitimate say in coaching decisions. Bo Nix ain't one of them. Yeah, not yet. Should sign Rico Dowdle? Yes, that's what I'm talking about. There are a ton of good running backs available. Yeah, quarterback should almost never get personnel say. Mahomes drafted CEH and Rashee Rice. You see what Aaron Rodgers did. You see what freaking Russell Wilson did. Russell Wilson derailed his own career. Bo has to trust Sean Payton if he trusts Webb. I mean, yeah, again, try and parse it, whatever. I think at the end of the day, I think we understand the synergy between these three is good. And, maybe kind of the levels of input between Sean and Davis Webb change a little bit. And they probably maybe need to change a little bit for the offense to evolve moving forward. That's totally fine, man. That's what happens. Jackson saying, I don't think they would let Jim go to the Bills unless Vance is staying. And it seems like all indications now is that Vance is staying. The Cardinal fans revolted. They called in and said, I'm giving up my season tickets if we hire Vance Joseph. So, yeah, it's okay. You could sell me on the fact that, hey, Davis Webb and Vance Joseph being counterbalances to Sean Payton's intensity is good. Yes, you need all kinds of makeups on your team, right? The issue, and this is like what happens with like Jim Harbaugh with the Niners, right? He was such an intense guy and he didn't really hire any guys that like weren't intense either. So it just became kind of a miserable environment and you burn out quickly that way. Yeah, exactly. Baker Mayfield hired Freddie Kitchens back in 2019 over Stefanski. Yeah, man. Peyton Manning had no say in Gary Kubiak. Saw how that worked out. Super Bowl, baby. Because the guys were forced to collaborate. It was good stuff. All right, y'all. 204 people in here. I greatly appreciate all of you. I have some more work I got to get to before I get to bed. So I'm going to let y'all go. But Flacco, Jackson, Kodiak, C. Rogers, man, Braden. Who else we got in here? Respect my coast. Hate crimes. Oh man, yeah, they did hear Kodiak's rant last night. It was great. Biggie Bronco, man, Dylan, so many of you guys in here. It's great to see every single one of y'all here. I'll be back tomorrow. Y'all be sure again hit that bell for notifications so you know when I go live or drop a video. I'll be back again soon, and I mean this is gonna be a fun time, Broncos country. We start the next Super Bowl run today. I'll see y'all later. Go Broncos.